Picture this. You're standing around a fire. It's 50,000 BC. The sun just went down. There's no Netflix, no phone. No existential dread about your inbox. Pause, there's just you, the flames, and thick, choking smoke curling directly into your face. And somewhere, at some point, one of your ancestors looked at that smoke and thought, wait. What if I did that on purpose? This is the story of how humans discovered smoking. Not cigarettes. Not cigars. Not the guy outside the office you always end up talking to for way too long. We're talking about the very first time a human being intentionally inhaled something burning, and why that might be one of the oldest habits our species has ever had. Because here's the thing nobody tells you: smoking doesn't start with tobacco. It doesn't start with colonial trade routes, Native American ceremonies, or even agriculture. The desire to inhale smoke might be hardwired into us on a level so deep, it predates civilization entirely. And the evidence for this? Genuinely insane. Let's start with fire. Because before you can smoke anything, you need fire. And fire has been part of the human story for a very, very long time. The oldest confirmed evidence of controlled fire use dates back roughly 1 million years from a site called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Archaeologists found burnt plant ash and charred bone, not the result of a wildfire but of a sustained, contained fire used deliberately inside a cave. Now, 1 million years ago, we weren't even Homo sapiens yet. That was Homo erectus, our earlier cousin with a smaller brain, a heavier brow, and absolutely zero interest in being told what to do with it. They sat around fires just like we do. They cooked, stayed warm, huddled together in the dark. And breathed smoke. Every single day for hundreds of thousands of years, every human and pre-human ancestor sat near a fire and inhaled smoke. It was unavoidable. It was constant. It was basically the original air quality situation, and nobody had an app to check it. But here's where it gets interesting. Some of that smoke wasn't just wood smoke. When you burn organic matter, you don't just get carbon dioxide and water vapor, you get a cocktail of compounds depending on what you're burning. Some plants, when combusted, release psychoactive chemicals, alkaloids, terpenes, compounds that interact with the human nervous system in ways that are, let's say, noticeable. In other words, some of our ancestors were absolutely, accidentally getting high around the campfire. And they had no idea why they felt amazing. This isn't a fringe theory. Researchers have proposed for decades that early humans living in forested environments were regularly exposed to the smoke of psychoactive plants, like cannabis, Nicotiana species, and various entheogens that grow naturally across Africa, Europe, and Asia. The human brain, it turns out, has receptors that respond to cannabinoids. These receptors didn't evolve because of cannabis. They are part of our endocannabinoid system, which regulates everything from mood and memory to appetite. But the fact that they exist means that when a human first inhaled smoke from a burning cannabis plant, their brain wasn't confused. Their brain was like, oh, hello. I've been waiting for you. Pause. That moment, that first accidental hit of psychoactive smoke around a prehistoric campfire, might be the true origin of smoking. Not a decision. Not a plan. Just a very pleasant accident, repeated enough times that someone eventually thought to recreate it on purpose. Think about that for a second. The entire multi-trillion-dollar global tobacco industry, centuries of ritual, shamanic traditions, medical practices, social customs, all of it may have started because a tired hunter sat downwind of the wrong bush and had a surprisingly great evening. History is sometimes beautiful in the most absurd ways. Now here's where we have to be careful about timelines. Ancient humans smoking things versus ancient humans intentionally cultivating things to smoke are very different claims. Let's look at what the archaeology actually tells us. The oldest direct evidence of intentional cannabis use, meaning burned cannabis seeds found in a context suggesting deliberate inhalation, comes from a burial site in the Pamir Mountains of Central Asia, dating back to around 500 BC. Excavators found wooden braziers containing stones that had been superheated alongside residue from cannabis plants with unusually high THC content. This wasn't wild cannabis used for rope or seeds. This was the good stuff. And it was placed directly in a ritual burial context 2,500 years ago. But here's the question that should be sitting in the back of your mind. Does the absence of older physical evidence mean it didn't happen earlier? Or does it just mean we haven't found it yet? Organic material, seeds, leaves, plant fiber, almost never survives thousands of years in the ground. We find stone tools from 3 million years ago because stone is basically indestructible. But a wooden pipe filled with dried herbs, gone in a few centuries. A leather pouch of cannabis, dissolved back into the earth long before any archaeologist showed up with a trowel. In this case, the absence of evidence is absolutely not evidence of absence. There is also the Herodotus problem. Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian writing in the 5th century BC, described in remarkable detail a nomadic people from the Eurasian steppe called the Scythians performing what he called a vapor bath. They would set up small enclosed tents, heat stones until they glowed, throw hemp seeds onto those stones, sit inside the tent inhaling the smoke, and, as Herodotus wrote, howl with pleasure. For centuries, historians assumed he was exaggerating or misunderstanding what he saw. Then, archaeologists started excavating Scythian burial mounds and found, you guessed it, bronze braziers, heated stones, and hemp residue. Exactly what Herodotus described. Let's talk about tobacco because it's the plant most people associate with smoking. Tobacco belongs to the genus Nicotiana, and it is native to the Americas. That matters enormously because it means tobacco was completely unknown to Old World civilizations. When European explorers arrived in the Caribbean in 1492, they immediately noticed indigenous people doing something strange. Columbus himself wrote in his journal about seeing men and women walking around with small glowing sticks, inhaling smoke from burning dried leaves and blowing it out through their noses and mouths. His crew was baffled. His crew also within weeks tried it themselves, because of course they did. But tobacco use in the Americas is far, far older than 1492. Chemical residues in ancient pipes show tobacco use dating back at least 3,500 years in the southeastern United States. Some researchers believe it goes back 10,000 years or more, tied to early cultivation in the Amazon basin. And here's the key: tobacco in ancient America was not recreational. It was sacred. It was used in healing rituals, spirit communication, and binding agreements between tribes. Blowing smoke on someone was an act of blessing, connection, and respect. A shaman who smoked wasn't taking a casual cigarette break, he was opening a channel between the living and the divine. The smoke itself was considered a living messenger traveling between worlds, carrying prayers upward and bringing visions downward. That framing explains why tobacco use was so disciplined and controlled for thousands of years. When something is sacred, you treat it with reverence. You don't chain smoke it while watching TV. The idea of tobacco as a casual everyday habit, something you do on a lunch break or while waiting for the bus, is an almost entirely European invention, and a fairly recent one at that. Now let's go back even further. Because there's a piece of this story most people have never heard, and it might be the oldest evidence of intentional smoking in the entire archaeological record. In 2019, researchers made a remarkable discovery in the Great Salt Lake Desert in Utah. They found a hearth, a cooking fire roughly 12,000 years old, containing the seeds of Nicotiana attenuata, a wild tobacco species native to North America. These weren't seeds that accidentally blew into the fire. They were concentrated in a way that suggested deliberate placement. The site predates any known pottery or pipe artifacts in the region by thousands of years, pushing back the timeline of tobacco use by a massive margin. And it raises a fascinating question. If people were throwing tobacco into fires 12,000 years ago, what were people in other parts of the world doing with their local psychoactive plants at the exact same time? 12,000 years ago, humans were everywhere: Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia. And the human drive to alter consciousness is not an American phenomenon. It is a human phenomenon. Let me throw something at you that might sound wild but is taken seriously by respected anthropologists: the intoxication hypothesis. Across virtually every human culture ever documented, people have sought ways to alter their consciousness. They've drunk fermented beverages, eaten psychedelic mushrooms, inhaled smoke, chewed leaves, and swallowed seeds. This behavior is so universal, persistent, and independent across cultures that researchers believe it isn't accidental. Ronald Siegel, a psychopharmacologist at UCLA, proposed in the 1980s that the pursuit of intoxication is a fourth drive, alongside hunger, thirst, and sex, biologically embedded in animal behavior. Elephants deliberately seek out fermented marula fruit to get drunk. Reindeer in Siberia deliberately eat Amanita muscaria mushrooms and then drink the urine of other reindeer who ate them because the psychoactive compounds pass through intact. Reindeer doing drug recycling in Siberia. Honestly, respect. Pause. The point is, if the drive to alter consciousness is this deep and this old, it's entirely reasonable that early humans were deliberately exposing themselves to smoke from psychoactive plants long before they had pottery, pipes, or agriculture. They learned through trial and error that it changed something in their minds. This was prehistoric trial and error, high stakes, occasionally fatal. But the ones who survived remembered. They told others, passing down generations of unwritten, lived knowledge around a fire in the dark. Long before smoking was recreational or spiritual, it may have been medical. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest known medical documents in the world, dating to ancient Egypt around 1550 BC, describes treating throat and lung conditions by inhaling smoke from heated herbs. From a modern perspective, treating lung problems with smoke sounds crazy. But the specific herbs they used, including henbane, contain genuine pharmacological properties when inhaled. The ancient Greeks used therapeutic smoke regularly. Hippocrates, the guy doctors take an oath to today, wrote about inhaling herbal vapors to treat lung diseases. The logic wasn't crazy for its time. Smoke reaches the lungs directly, making it a direct delivery system. We still use this delivery mechanism today with asthma inhalers, anesthetic gases, and nebulizers. The delivery method survived, the burning part thankfully didn't. From ancient Indian Ayurvedic medicine Dhumapana, or smoke drinking, to ancient China, Mesopotamia, and Greece, virtually every early civilization used inhaled smoke as a recognized medical practice. Not because of addiction, but because it worked, or at least, worked often enough in a world without modern medicine to clear a meaningful bar. There's another angle here: social bonding. Humans are deeply social animals. We evolved in groups, and group cohesion, the ability to trust each other and coordinate, was a matter of life and death. Isolated individuals died, groups survived. Shared rituals, including the shared consumption of psychoactive smoke, are extraordinarily powerful tools for social cohesion. Modern neuroscience confirms that shared altered experiences synchronize neural activity, increase trust, and deepen group identity. When a group of ancient humans sat in a closed space breathing smoke together, that wasn't just recreational, it was social technology. It built the deep trust required to face dangerous environments together and come back alive. The ritual smoke circle wasn't just a party. It was infrastructure. Here's where we arrive at the uncomfortable part of the story. The transition from sacred smoke to casual habit was a historical disaster. When tobacco arrived in Europe in the 16th century, it spread with frightening speed. Within decades, it went from an exotic curiosity to a continental obsession. By the 1600s, global trade was booming. By the 1700s, snuff was fashionable among European aristocracy. By the 1800s, cigars were everywhere. And by the early 1900s, the mass-manufactured cigarette made tobacco cheaper, more convenient, and more addictive than ever before. What took indigenous Americans thousands of years to build into a disciplined, sacred practice was turned into a mass-market consumer product in less than 4 centuries. In the 20th century, tobacco companies spent billions suppressing internal evidence that cigarettes caused cancer. They marketed to children, hired doctors to endorse products, and added chemical compounds to make nicotine hit faster and harder. They took something ancient, ritualistic, and communal, and engineered it to be as physically destructive and financially extractive as possible. A shaman and a tobacco executive both worked with the same plant, but they shared almost nothing else. The moral gap between a shaman in 500 BC placing cannabis on hot stones and a 1960s executive marketing cigarettes to teenagers is one of the largest chasms in human history. So when did ancient humans start smoking? The honest answer is, we don't know and we probably never will. Physical evidence takes us back 12,000 years with certainty, and speculation takes us back much further. The drive behind it, the desire to alter consciousness, share ritual, and deliver medicine, is likely as old as fire itself. The ability to look at a burning plant and think, last time that happened I felt different. Let me do that again, isn't addiction. That's intelligence. What we do know is that by the time written history began, humans in every corner of the world were already putting smoke into their bodies. The plants changed, the rituals changed, but the behavior was already ancient. There's something almost poetic about that. For all the technology, medicine, and content separating us from our ancestors, thin threads of continuity run unbroken through 100,000 years of human experience. Fire, smoke, breath. The oldest humans sat around fires breathing the same smoky air you'd smell at a bonfire tonight. Some began paying attention to what it did to them, started choosing it, and passed that choice down across generations, to the Scythians howling in their tents, the Egyptian physicians, the Mayan shamans, and the Taino people watching confused Europeans try tobacco for the first time. Next time you flip a light switch, sit by a summer fire, or catch a whiff of wood smoke on a cold night, remember, you're participating in something far older than you realize. You're doing what humans have always done. You're breathing.